Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Women of Golf Show. I'm Ted Odorico, and joining me is LPGA professional Cindy Miller, and we are your hosts. We're broadcasting live every Tuesday morning from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern here on the blogtalkradio.com network, bringing you some of the best golfers, teacher professionals, and entrepreneurs helping to elevate women's golf. We're so glad you decided to join us this morning, so grab your coffee and let's get started. All right, good morning, everybody, and again, welcome to the Women of Golf Show. I'm Ted Odorico, and unfortunately, Cindy is not with us this morning. She is off playing in a event for charity this morning, so she will not be joining us, but I've got two great guests that will be joining me here in just a moment. First up is going to be Kim Kaufman. She is the winner of this past weekend Symetra Tour's 4 Wins Invitational. I'll bring her out in just a second, and then a little bit later on, joining me is LPGA Class A teacher professional Rebecka Heinmert. She's going to be joining me on the second half of the show. But thank you, everybody, for joining me this morning. And let me just remind everybody that the sponsors of the Women of Golf is brought to you by iGolf Sports Network and Golf Tips Magazine. iGolf Sports is a live stream broadcast and media production company providing top-quality programming designed to attract the golfing enthusiast. And, of course, Golf Tips, the game's most in-depth instruction magazine, offering insightful reviews on the latest equipment, tips from top PGA and LPGA teacher professionals, all designed to help improve your game from tee to green. So subscribe today. Go to golftipsmag.com. All right, as I mentioned, I've got a great guest to start things off this morning. She won this past weekend's 4 Wins Invitational. Her name is Kim Kaufman. She's a native of Clark, South Dakota. She was also a medalist for Texas Tech University at the 2012 Landfall Tradition, 2013 Women's Golf Coast Association Second Team All-American, also top 5 in the Golf Week Saragon Fall 2012 collegiate rankings for the first, earned her Symetra Tour membership as a 2013 rookie. She's won 2 other events besides this one here. We'll talk to her about that and more. Please welcome my very special guest this morning, Kim Kaufman. Good morning, Kim.
Good morning, Ted. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. And for some reason, I don't know why, that always goes a lot smoother, and for some reason my tongue got tied this morning, but so my apologies. That's what happens. See, that's what happens when you get on air, you talk too much, and these things happen. But welcome to the show, and first and foremost, congratulations on another win. And we were talking off air, and you said that even though you'd won 2 other events a few years ago, this kind of felt like a first win again. Explain.
Yeah, so I won in 2013 and 2014 on Symetra, and then I went on and I've played the LPGA the last 6 years, and the last 2 seasons for me have been a bit of a struggle. I just really kind of lost my game and lost my confidence. So over this break that we've had from the pandemic, I just really just committed to changing a few things and working really hard. So coming out and having a win really felt like my first win again. It felt like I was trying to restart my career a bit. So yeah, it had just been so long, but it was super exciting and just nice to see that work pay off.
I can imagine. You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that. We when the season first started, of course, we had the winner on from the very first Symetra event this year, and then lo and behold, everything started closing up, and we literally, at least I did, the Sunday night before the next event, we got notification that the tour was basically closing down until further notice, and that absolutely no interviews were going to be happening at all, just as a further step. So we were obviously very disappointed because we've had the pleasure of interviewing great young ladies like yourself each week. We've been doing this for about 5 years now on the show, and really enjoy it. So we were really disappointed that we weren't getting the winners coming in each week, but obviously it wasn't as disappointing as it was for you ladies. So tell me, when you first heard the news, what was your reaction? Was that kind of something that you expected, do you think, or was it a little bit of a shock?
Yeah, I mean, I remember that vividly. You know, the night before golf canceled, we were watching the basketball game. I saw her watching that. You know, I think it was the Jazz player tested, and we were watching the Dallas game still play, and it was kind of unfolding. I'm sitting here with my husband. I thought, man, this is crazy. And while we're sitting there, we have booked a rental car to go to Phoenix for the LPGA event. And we're like, we're going West Coast. Next day, wake up, and I'm trying to practice, but I'm getting all these texts and all these calls just from friends, like, what do you think? What's going on? And, like, talking about the men and Sawgrass. And finally I said, I'm not practicing. Like, I got to go home. We're just, like, trying to, get some information. I mean, I was so unfocused. We thought, is this going to happen? Are we going to cancel? And sure enough, late at that afternoon, we got an email saying we're not going to go. And I was totally shocked, I think, which is kind of funny because we had canceled like our Thailand, Singapore, China weeks on the LPGA, which happened like in January. So we were definitely a little bit more aware of it, I think, because we definitely were over there. Mm-hmm. But I just think there was this idea that like it's over there, like it's over in China and Asia, and it's not here in the U.S. And obviously that was naive to think of us because of the way people travel. So yeah, it was. And then, it was like 3 weeks at a time. I was like, okay, well, we're going to go to Hawaii. Like, I have a friend that was coming to Hawaii with me, and I'm like, oh, well, for sure go to Hawaii. Hawaii canceled. It just kept going. And I got to a point eventually where I'm like, I don't know if we're ever going to play again. It's funny how you kind of switches over. So definitely a weird time, but I also try to just enjoy it because when else have I ever had, like, a summer off? Like, I spent the 4th of July at home, and I thought, I haven't done that in 10 years. So there was also, some good things that you tried to take out of it.
Right, exactly. Well, you have to. I mean, otherwise you'd be pulling your hair out, just because you're there. You're competitive by nature. That's why you're doing what you do. So let me, go back a little ways, several years, to when you first began playing golf. Talk a little bit about how that happened. How did you get introduced to golf, and what was it about golf that appealed to you?
So, yeah, I started playing golf when I was 4 years old, so I was one of the young ones that started. And honestly, my parents, I grew up in South Dakota, like, farming, rural town, and my parents had a farm, and they had to sell the farm. So they moved to my mom's hometown, which had about 1,000 people, Clark, and it had a 9-hole golf course, though. So my dad, who's, probably 30 at the time, thought, I'll take up playing golf. Well, he played very little, because he had 2 little girls that thought it was more fun to come with him instead of him playing. So I was 4, my sister was 6, and we would go out. And my parents were not golfers at all. My mom has never golfed, but I always say they always gave us the opportunity. You get home from work and we go straight to the golf course. We live, it's, like I say, a super small town, so we just got in our car and drove over. And then I think the really big thing that changed, maybe the path of me playing golf was I was 5 years old, and we had a South Dakota Golf Association clinic in Clark. This guy came to give a clinic, and I was 5, my sister was 7, but this guy was really good. Like, we really liked him, and he was just trying to start giving lessons. His name is Todd Kolb, and he was in Sioux Falls, which is about 2 hours. So when I was 6 on, we would meet halfway. He would give us lessons, and to this day he's still my golf coach. So 22, 23 years later, it's been a pretty cool journey. And he became a very well-known teacher and a great teacher, but we really started together.
Wow, that's great. So what were some of the things that he taught you along the way that to this day really sticks with you? Obviously, you've learned a lot over the years, but there's always, maybe 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 things that really stick out that your coach has said to you, okay, Kim, this is what you need to do, and this is what you need to focus on, and don't worry about this over here. What were some of the things that he taught you that have really stuck with you?
Yeah, he honestly taught me everything about the game. Like I say, my parents were not golfers, but that was the best thing about it. But I think he always was he was great for me because growing up in South Dakota, there's not obviously a huge golf scene, and we'd go out and maybe play a U.S. Girls Junior or something, and I don't think I had any confidence in it, but he always, Kim, you belong there. I remember going to college, to Texas Tech, and thinking, if I could just make the team. And I think I won the first qualifier, and he said, Kim, that's what you should be doing. He always knew, and he always believed in me and always told me those things. And like I say, in these past couple of years, it's been hard. You remember that. And he's still telling me those things. So, but even little things, he'll tell me, if I'm struggling on short putts, so we used to do this little count, a 1, 2, 3, 4 as you putted, and I'll still bring that back out and use that. So, there isn't anything I know in golf that, honestly, that Todd didn't teach me. What area of the game have you struggled with the most in your career, and what seems to we know golf is hard, but some have an easier time with their iron play, some struggle with their putting, and so on and so forth. What's the easiest part of your game that you really have solid, and what area
still gives you a little bit of difficulty at times?
I've always been just a straight ball hitter. Like I don't hit it super long. I hit it, long enough, I would say. But I think my short game, especially in the last couple of years, or even I was the worst bunker player in college. Like if I got a bunker up and down, I think the team got like dessert. Like I was so bad in the bunker, and everyone knew it. I just avoided them. But when you're a good iron player, you don't usually. But oh my gosh, it was awful. Then you get on tour, you realize you can't have that bad a bunker play. So I've really worked on my bunker, but my chipping still gives me trouble. A little bit at times. I just have bad habits I go back to a lot. And putting has been up and down. I've been very good putter at times. I was a very good putter in college, and then I've also kind of been on the other end of it. And that's something I really recommitted myself to working on this off season. That's really, I would say, off season, this break, that has really paid off.
Now, you mentioned a few moments ago that you said you really struggled the last few years leading up to this win, which I know for many players, we've interviewed, probably 100 Symetra Tour players over the last 5 years, and many of them have had the same thing where they just, nothing was working, everything was sort of, the wheels literally were falling off the bus. And then there was almost like a switch went off. Instead of just trying to grind it out so much, they just said, you know what, I'm just going to come out here and have fun, not going to worry about this, not going to worry about that. And lo and behold, their first win would come literally the week after. Was that similar for you in the sense, obviously you'd already had a couple of wins, but was that kind of, for this week coming in, this past weekend's win, was that kind of similar for you where you just said, you know what, I know I've got the game, I've done it before, I just need to go out there, focus on the things I need to, but I'm going to have fun doing it?
Yeah, I think a little bit. I mean, about a year and a half ago, I started working with a new mental coach, and that was big, and we've worked a lot in a year. But at the same time, so I've played the last 7 weeks in a row. This was my 7th week. And I kept playing really good on the first day. And I would play great on the first day, and then I'd kind of even went under. And I finished okay, but it was like I wasn't really following through. So I got to this week. I played great on Friday. I was leading the tournament. And I mean, I had a joke with the Symetra media girl, kept coming up to interview me the first. She's like, Kim, I kind of want to see you on Sunday. I said, yeah, I really want to see you too. I keep seeing you the first day, and I don't see you again. But I did. I finally told myself, I'm like, gosh, Kim, just have the attitude that, have some confidence in your ability as a player and the ability of your work. I have to just kind of let the stress and the pressure, I keep putting on myself go because it's not working clearly. And I think that's always been that way for me. I do something long enough that doesn't work. You eventually say, okay, snap out of it. Stop trying so hard. Stop striving for it so much. And I think, I did that, well this week, but it took me about 7 weeks of doing the opposite to finally get there.
Well, I think what happens a lot of times is you put undue pressure on yourselves. I mean, this is what many of the others have said is, they're out there, maybe their putting's letting them down, maybe their bunker play is, you've said that you struggle, here and there with, kind of gets the best of them. And they figure, well, I just got to grind it a little harder. I got to do it a little bit more, and I've got to do this, and practice harder and do this harder. And ultimately what ends up happening is they actually get into a funk, for a lack of better words. And then something inside them says, you know what, I'm not having fun. And when I'm not having fun, I don't want to be out here. In fact, we've had many that actually came to the point where they said, you know what, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. But something changed in their mindset that allowed them to be able to change their attitude and go out there. And as I said, then they started to see that success. So I think from a mental standpoint, and you can attest to this, it can be very challenging, especially as you said, 7 weeks in a row here, you're grinding it out, and sometimes you're not always seeing the results you would like. What do you say to yourself when you're out there on the course and things aren't going well to get you back on track?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I've seen it, every year I see it. With rookies or with anyone. I mean, it happens to girls every year on every level, and guys, I'm sure, where you start to lose it, and it's just a spiral. And one thing that I was not good at is these last 2 years I would just practice more and more and more, and I got into this rhythm of let's say I went just on a Tuesday of an off week, I had a range session, it didn't go well. Well, I would carry that with me. If I'm not hitting on the range well here, I'm not going to play well next week, and just became just a terrible, just down the rabbit hole. And honestly, was having a conversation with one of my good, veteran LPGA Tour friends, and she's like, that's when she said, Kim, you just got to have, it doesn't have to be perfect. It does not matter how you hit it on Tuesday, the week before, or, even the day before you go out and play. You don't need perfect iron. You know what I mean? That's what I had to finally accept that. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect to go
Right.
out and shoot a great round. 'Cause we all know we've all hit it great on the range and gone out and shot, our worst round. So, but I just started getting in a bad habit of carrying everything with me. And I've finally let that go a little bit. I mean, I've definitely let that go, and that has been kind of a huge game changer as well.
Yeah, I think you have to, and it's difficult, especially when you're out there and you're grinding it, and especially with this season because you've had such a long layover between starting back up with the tour. So you're trying to figure, okay, what do I do to keep my game sharp? I'm not playing week in, week out like I have been. The tours are shut down. So what am I going to do to keep myself engaged enough that when we do start back up, I'm going to be competitive?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So you're thinking that you're, and that's something I think a lot of players. Right. Go ahead. Sorry.
I know a lot of girls that they put their clubs away and said, I'm going to put them away and I'm going to get them out 4 weeks at a time. And I thought, okay, I could do that, but I really think I have some things to work on. Like, I think I could use this time. So I kind of I made some changes where it's like I maybe didn't putt great right away, but I had the time finally. Before when things aren't going well, you got to tee it up every week. You're just kind of looking for like a Band-Aid. Like, what can I just get through this week and get through the next week? And that's why I think part of it, you start to spiral. But so I started making some changes where it's like I know I might not see great results right away, but it'll come, and I had the time. And I also just played. We have like a weekend game here at my club, and I played that every week. And I tell you what, when you're home for 4 months, you wake up on the weekend, you feel like you're going to play the U.S. Open. Like, you're so excited. Like, I couldn't wait to go play this little handicap game with the members of my club that I love. And it was great though. It was great for me. We had some really good players, and you put like $60, and you don't want to lose $60 or $120 every weekend playing it twice. So I felt lucky, and I felt like I did feel like I had a little bit of not an edge, but I felt like I had played a little bit of competitive golf prior to our restart.
Let me ask you. We talked off air about the LPGA. You obviously had earned status. And a lot of people get confused at, and this was what we were talking about. And so I want you maybe just to explain a little bit. You don't have to get into all the details, but there's obviously different status types, if you will, with the LPGA, and some of it's conditional, some of it's not. Explain a little bit, what does it mean? You earned your status, I believe it was in 2014. And what does that mean? Was that full status? Was that what was the scenario, and explain the difference.
Yep. So like my first 6 years out on tour, I had always finished in the top 80, which is always great, full status. And really in the top 100 on LPGA, you have full status. The last 2 seasons, I was finishing like 120, 125, which meant I had to go back to Q school. So when you go to Q school, it'll say that you get that 45 cards are given out, and that's true. 45 girls will get status, but in reality, only the top 20 are really high enough on the list to play every single event. So, like, I finished 30th last year at Q school, which means translated into my priority number, which everything was off the priority list to start the year, especially, was 159. So, okay, it's not terrible, but essentially, when you're starting the year and you have a field that's only 144 players, that means I need essentially, 15 girls that are higher than me to decide not to play the event. So when I started this year, I knew like Phoenix was going to be tough for me. I would think I ended up being first alternate when they ended up canceling it. So I said I'm going to play probably a little bit of center just to stay sharp, and that's why you'll find girls that play both tours. But as the year goes on, you reshuffle. So like I went to Australia and played Made Money, which is great. Any money you make when you're not quite up to full status will help you because they'll reshuffle like a third of the way in and take like whoever's made the most money and, bump you up a little bit. And then as the year goes on, as you get in the summer, having a number, pretty much everyone who's up will get to play because those top girls will start taking weeks off and not play, or you'll have injuries come up and you're okay. But the start of the year can be a little bit tough. And how it's going this year, I'm playing a little bit of both because we're going to have full field events, but because of daylight, a full field event is going to start to be 120 or 108 or even less. And I just know at 159 on the priority list, like I'm probably not going to get into those events.
Very interesting, and thank you for sharing that. I watched the interview that you did after winning the event with the Symetra's Media Tour rep, and there was something that really caught my eye in the interview, and you talked about, and I'm going to just read out here what you said. It's funny when you're single you don't mind being on the road. There's nothing at home. And then you get married in a relationship, and suddenly you're like, I want to go home. You obviously at one point were single when you were first out on tour, and now you're married to your husband, Johan, and we'll talk about him in a second. It does make a big difference. Does he travel with you now a lot, or some of the time, or once in a while? What's the relationship as far as your tour schedule goes?
Yeah, it is different, and it's something I never thought I'd like talk about out there. When I first started, like I said, I was single. I thought it was great to go and travel, and we have an off week, like let's go here, let's stay in Hawaii or whatever. So, but it changes. It just changes, and I think anyone who's married would understand that. If you travel for work, you don't want to be home. So, so I got married in December, and his plan was to come out and caddy, not for me, but for someone else, just to get it back on tour. He's a golfer as well, and obviously things changed. And when I came back, knowing my priority status, that I wouldn't get into every event. My normal caddy that I've had for 5 years said, Kim, I gotta work too, which I always understand. So she went to work for someone else who's gonna play the whole year, which means Johan gets bumped up to head caddy. So now he's in caddying for me, and that's not I don't think we want to do that. We don't want to do that long term. It's just a lot of time together, but it's been great. So he'll travel pretty much now the rest of the year and caddy for me as we need. But his plan is really to work for someone else eventually.
So this was the first time, first win, because you had two other wins that we mentioned. Obviously, he was not the caddy. But no. He was this time. How did he do overall?
It's been fun because I've always when I've been on LPGA, I've had two caddies, and they've been like seasoned veteran caddies, like just great caddies. And Johan, when he came, and he'd caddied a little bit like in Europe, like for friends and stuff. It's not like he didn't know anything, but there's just little things that people don't understand, that caddying is like a profession. It's not just like, oh, you play the Saturday game with your guys, you can be a caddy and you just carry the bag. Like there's just so much more to it than that. So I've really seen him in these weeks just get better at little things, So like that last day, I think twice he was really confident in a club that we kind of disagreed on, and he was right, and I just seeing him have confidence in what he's doing has been cool, and it makes me feel good because I know when he goes out and gets the bag for someone else that he'll be, a great caddy. Right. So, and it's just fun. It's obviously really fun to do something like that with your husband on the bag. We enjoyed it. You have great photos that'll be there forever. So it was pretty cool.
And we've heard a lot of tour players over the years talk about their caddies, and obviously not all of them are married or what have you. But one of the things that's important for them is for their caddy to understand when to step in and when not to say something. Do you think Johan has learned that since he's been helping out?
Yeah, much better. I think that thing too can be easier for me. Maybe some girls disagree, but for me that's easier when he is my husband. I think it is hard. Like I say, caddying can be so hard, and you need someone who obviously is good at the actual job, the numbers, managing a golf course. But you also need someone that, like, personally, you get, like I always say, it's like dating someone. You got, like, I spend more time with my caddy than I do my husband normally. So you got to get along. Right. They got to understand you. It's literally like a relationship. And when we've had many caddies or girls, and like we've hooked up, like me and my caddy hooked up like players and caddies before, thinking this is gonna be great, this is gonna be perfect. Total disaster. They're like, man, I couldn't stand that guy. Which is just like if you hook someone up on a blind date sometimes, you're like, that should have worked really well. Like you guys have so much in common. Right. Terrible. So it is literally like trying to find. These poor girls are trying to find a boyfriend. They're trying to find a caddy. Like it's hard. So I agree. It is hard to know when to say something or not to, but the best caddies I've had they're always consistent. That's what I'll say. The two caddies, they're always consistent. I'll say my normal caddy, Audrey, she could give me, she could give me 6 wrong clubs in a row, but we get up to that 7th hole, and she's still going to confidently tell me what club. Right. I think you get a lot of caddies that will suddenly go, like, just to start to agree, call them like a yes caddy. Can't do that. You got to be confident every hole. No matter how many mistakes you've made or, how bad the round is going. So, but it's a tough job. Right. People think caddying, they're out there carrying the bag, but it is not an easy job.
No, it's not. I can attest to that. So, yeah, it's not. You're right. It's not just carrying the bag. there's a lot that goes into it, and we'll save that for another show. But well, it's exciting, really. It's exciting that he was able to not only be there and do that function for you, but he was obviously there to experience the win with you as well. So it kind of feels extra special for him too, right?
Yes. Oh, I think so for sure. Like I say, he's out here. When we're home in Fort Worth, we practice. He practices with me all the time. I say he's my practice coach. And then usually I go off and I do it, and I get to enjoy I get to reap the rewards. So he got to be there with me because he's put in a ton of time with me during this time off as well. So it was fun for him to actually, be a part of it, like a real part of it, stand up there and, hold the trophy with me. So I think he enjoyed that a lot.
What do you like to do for fun outside of golf? When the golf clubs are in the garage or wherever they're stored, what else do you like to do?
I go through times where I can do a lot of yoga. I do a lot of yoga at home and on the road. We love to watch our Texas Tech sports. He loves to watch the NFL and the NBA, but we're pretty big sports people, obviously. When we're home, we just do like normal people things, which you probably hear from a lot of girls. Like, I'll go to the grocery store today, and I haven't been to the grocery store really in 7 weeks. Like, that's exciting for me. Like, I'm pretty excited about that. Cook meals, like, have a routine. Like, it sounds really weird, but when you live out of a suitcase, you just want to come home. And I think maybe more of a female thing. You just want to come home and kind of like,
sure,
I don't know, be homey, I guess. So, but and just we catch up with our friends. We catch up with our neighbors that we haven't seen. We'll try to, we'll hit a couple dinners. We'll, just normal life. It's nothing crazy and exciting. I don't have any I come home and I, make pottery. Like, there's nothing crazy going on, but just
right.
Be a normal person, we always say.
Do you find it challenging? This was something that we talked about, I believe, last week on the show. You mentioned a little bit ago that this is 7 events in a row, which can be very daunting schedule. And what was interesting is the player that we talked to last week said that around 4 or 5 events for them in a row is about where they start to peak out. Any more than that, and it gets just a little bit too much. Are you like that as well, or does that bother you? The more events, the better. You don't really get tired out, or do you feel 4 or 5 events in a row is okay? That's my limit. I need a break, and then I'll come back and play 3 or 4 more events.
Yeah, no, I think she's definitely right. I think you do have a limit. So my original goal, my original intention was to go play the first Symetra event in Battle Creek, play 2 LPGA events in Toledo, and play a Symetra event in Mesa, play 4 events. Well, I go to Battle Creek, and we finished 4th, and it was just so fun to play and to compete after 6 months off. I looked at Johan, I said, let's just keep playing. Like, let's just go. Like, we were just all jacked up. So I signed up for all the rest of the events, and about 4 weeks in, we're in Phoenix playing. It's 125, and I was like, what are we doing? Like, this was a terrible idea. But but I knew it. I've been out here long enough. I played 8 in a row once in the LPGA, and I just knew, like, even the LPGA event in Arkansas that we played was a Friday start, so we had almost all 3-day events. So you just have to be really diligent. Like, no golf on Monday. I don't care how bad you think you're hitting it or what you think you need to do. Light days, maybe on Tuesday. So it really took our time. But it's funny, I got to Battle Creek, and my mental coach asked me on the night before, she said, how do you feel? Like, what do you think you need? And I said, I think the biggest thing this week is that it's the 7th week, and I'm tired, and, I'm kind of ready to, like, pack in and go home. And, she's like, all right, well, but it's still, a good week to have a good week. And, funny enough, that's the week I played the best. But it's a lot mental, but I think ideally, yes, 3-4 weeks, 5 weeks max is really kind of the sweet spot.
Yeah, I think it's, because it gets to the point where exhaustion starts to set in, and then you're not only physically not feeling at your best, but then mentally things start to happen where, you almost become a little bit lethargic in some.
Yeah.
I've heard some of the girls say that in the past where, they've suddenly developed a little bit of brain fog because they've just been playing so much, and they're out there, and especially when you get into the summer months when you're out there in that heat. And you've played, because I know last year they had, I think it was 7 or 8 events in the Symetra that were strung together, and almost every player that we had come on the show afterwards said the same thing. They said, we were just exhausted, and I wish I hadn't have played all 7 events, and, yada, yada, yada. And it just got to the point where, they said, I'm not going to do that again. So I was just curious to your thoughts on that. Some people, they thrive on the adrenaline, and they just love to be out there compete, and it could be 3 events, 5 events, 10 events. They're going to be out there. So very interesting, very interesting take. Go ahead.
I've always struggled. When I started playing on tour, these the top girls take weeks off, and I always felt like there's kind of 2 schools of thought. Like you earn those weeks, those girls have earned those weeks off because they play great, and other girls I haven't earned those weeks off yet. That's why I've always been wanting to play, but I have tried at times to say, Kim, you got to take a week. But like on Symetra especially, but in the LPGA, it's so few dollars between, a girl getting her card, 10th and 11th, or this year, so you're going to look back and go, God, I could have just went and played that event and at least just made the cut. That could have been all the difference. So I'm one who says you got to earn those weeks off, and other girls think, nope, I just need to stick to my schedule and take them off when I need them. So I think there's 2 schools of thought there, and not that either's right or either's wrong, but I definitely kind of lean towards the latter. I think I got to earn those, which I didn't feel like I had yet. I mean, we've been home for 6 months. I thought, gosh, am I really going to play 3 weeks and go home again? Like, I'm tired of standing on that putting green doing putting drills at home. So we made it. And I thought it was the right decision, for this time being. But normally, yes, 3 to 4 weeks would be ideal.
Well, I think you know your body and you know what your limitations are, and I think you're able to push when you need to push and pull back when you need to pull back. But Kim, thank you very much for joining me this morning, and again, congratulations on your win at the 4 Winds Invitational. Where are you heading off to next?
I will go to Portland for the LPGA event next week, and then I will go and likely play the 2 Symetra events in Florida.
Perfect.
So good.
Well,
3
good
week
luck.
Stretch, just like we like. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, if you win another Symetra event, we're happy to have you come back on, and hopefully this time Cindy will be able to join us as well.
I would love that. I hope I am. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you. Yeah, not a problem. Good luck and enjoy your time off.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. That was our very special guest to start things off, Kim Kaufman, winner of this past weekend's Symetra Tour event, the 4 Winds Invitational. And as I see, our second guest is ready to jump on board. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Her name is Rebecka Heinmert. She's been on the show actually before, and she grew up in Sweden and was a member of the Swedish national golf team for 5 years. She's based now in San Francisco's East Bay, played in 3 NCAA championships for San Jose State. She's a 3-time academic All-American, went on to play professionally on the LPGA's Futures, or now Symetra Tour, and has been a member of the LPGA Teaching and Club Professionals Division since 2004. So please help me welcome my very special guest on the second half here, Rebecka Heinmert. Good morning, Rebecka, and welcome.
There. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing very well, and I'm glad to have you on. And as I know you're aware, Cindy unfortunately was not able to join us this morning. She's playing off in an event for charity, I believe. So she sends her best and her apologies for not being able to join us. But I think she told you she left you in good hands. We'll see about the end of the interview. But thank you for joining me.
Of course. So thank you for having me.
I know that you. My pleasure. So I know you've been on the show before, so you kind of understand how things work. But I know you came on board this morning a little bit before you came on, and you were able to hear our last guest a little bit talk about some things. And one of the things that we were talking about was some of the challenges while playing on tour. What were some of the challenges you played for a period on the Symetra Tour, or at that time it was called the Futures Tour? What were some of the challenges for you?
Oh, I very much related to what Kim was saying about the scheduling and not kind of allowing yourself to take a break, or, a lot of times it ended up being sort of a game time decision where how you were feeling and how you were playing, and I think how excited you were for the next tournament. And sometimes it was also kind of like, well, I need to take this week off because I haven't been playing well and I need to figure something out and I need to start making some money on the next few events. So,
right.
Yeah, I can very much relate to that. When I started playing at first, This was pretty early on, like after I graduated college. And, you know, I just didn't have any money. I think a lot of people don't know at the time, and I don't know what it is actually right now, but it was $500 to play each tournament. And that sounded like, at the time, was a lot of money.
Right.
And then just even traveling around, and, you know, I had a Ford Escort, which wasn't the best car for traveling around the country, I'll tell you that. So I ended up flying out a lot from California and then I would, you know, hitch a ride with somebody else and just pay that person for gas, and hopefully I enlivened the conversation a little bit, and we kind of traveled together. Yeah, I mean, definitely, like, it was a money struggle a lot of the time, you know, like, and I think part of that is, you know, it's a catch-22, right? I don't think I've ever really wished I was a dude, but sometimes when I was, because I had to raise money to go. I made a plan for 3 years, and I wanted to raise $75,000, I think it was. And which at the time, again, felt like such a humongous amount of money. But I had made this massive spreadsheet about how much money I think I needed to travel for the year. And so I added up all the entry fees, all the travel, all the, you know, food, you know, what was my budget per day, things like that. And I just, I think I still have that spreadsheet somewhere. It's like pretty interesting. I think it's pretty enlightening. Just, you know, and then I had about 10 or something people that ended up helping me, and they each gave me about like $5,000. And I was just like overjoyed, and I was like, oh my goodness, I can actually like maybe do this for at least 2 years, you know? So I kind of set out, and then, you know, my parents were not in a situation where they could really help me financially. So it was really I traveled on my own. I was over here, you know, my parents in Sweden. And, yeah, I just, I think there's something to be said for, you know, a lot of support is best. I mean, the more support you can have, whether it's financial or emotional, coaching, you know, the more you can have, the better, because you need it. Because it's a lonely road, you need somebody to call. You know, it's so. And at the time, you know, we didn't have iPhones were just coming out, so like we didn't even like have a proper way to like send videos. So let me think about that for a second.
Well, exactly. And for you, it was doubly difficult because your family was overseas. You know, some of the other girls that are from the United States, as they're traveling around, and some of them buddy up in that, but a lot of them have family that can make the trek to some, not all of them, but to some of the tournaments. So they're able to, you obviously didn't have that same advantage as some of the others. So I can imagine it could get very, very lonely at times. I mean, obviously you have your fellow tour players that you can kind of buddy up with, as you said, in some travel and so forth. But again, you couldn't just pick up the phone and say, I'm going to call overseas to my parents and see how they're doing.
Right.
You had to make sure it was built into the budget, you know. And,
yeah, for sure.
Sometimes, you know.
And then also, like, if you're not playing well, you don't want to be, like, the negative person and always, like, unload on the person that you're traveling with. So you really kind of have to be careful with that as well, because you don't want to drag somebody else down. And, I mean, I didn't have, you know, looking back, I probably didn't have the best setup in terms of, like, my game and where it was. I didn't really understand my game that well. I wish I would have, you know. I think looking back, a few years later, I remember going to this TrackMan seminar, and I just had this, you know, epiphany about my swing and my game and why I couldn't, because my struggle was always hitting greens in regulation. Like, I could putt really well, I could I could stay in the fairway reasonably. I wasn't the longest player, but hitting greens was kind of like my downfall. So I would hit, let's say, like 10 greens or something like that on average, which is super low. So I would just scramble it around. And then whenever I hit like 14 greens or plus, I would shoot under par.
Right.
So it was like kind of a hit or miss, and so that was a constant like kind of battle. Like that was probably my biggest struggle, as a player. And then sometimes sort of shooting myself in the foot a little bit. Like when I was playing well, then I would like, oh, I'm playing well, let's make a double.
Right.
Or something like that. And so that was the biggest thing for me. And then after I quit playing and started teaching, and I started kind of educating myself a little bit more, I was like, oh my gosh, it's no wonder I couldn't hit my long irons. My swing path is like 10 degrees inside out. And I was always hooking the ball when I missed it, and I was like, oh, I think I'm coming over the top. No, you're coming way too from the inside. And that was a big thing. Like we didn't have access to things like that at the time. That would have been, I think, pretty amazing looking back.
Well, in technology, there's so much available now to the not only the tour players, but even
much.
Oh yeah, and I wanted to get on that for just a second here, because you talk about here that on tour you struggled. A lot of the times you found yourself becoming very frustrated with your game. Really didn't understand, okay, what can I do to get myself better? You didn't have access to a lot of what's available today to be able to help guide you along. And even though you practiced hard and you did all the things you thought you needed to do, it just wasn't gelling for you at that time. And then you go on to say that you wanted to understand from a teaching perspective and see if that would help. So what were some of the things, not so much physically, but overall with your game, now as you look at it through the eyes or the lens of a teaching professional, what were some of the things that you saw that you were doing that weren't serving you as well as it could have?
Well, I think, looking back, actually this year, when we had the 3 months, there was 3 months this spring I didn't work. I wasn't, we were on quarantine over here in Northern Cal, so I didn't teach at all. So I cleaned out my iPhoto library, and I came across some really old videos of myself and my swing, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is really fascinating. So I started watching that a little bit, and sure enough, I was like, wow, that's. First of all, I'm very flexible, like most, I would say, young girls. Very, very mobile in the shoulders, and looking back, it really would have helped me to have more stability in my body. And I think I did understand that at the time, but I didn't have a plan. I made my own little workout plans and stuff like that, but that's not quite the same as having somebody help you. Although I did have somebody help me kind of, a little bit, but it, yeah. So, that's one aspect of it, because you do also need to have the, physical stamina to be out there, like Kim was saying about, being out there for 6 weeks. Like that takes some, you need to be in shape. Like it's not, you can't be walking around tired. That's not help you at all either. But I think I think the swing was right? Definitely. I'm sorry.
And mentally as well. I mean, the physical obviously is first and foremost. You've got to, be in pretty good shape to have that stamina, but also mentally as well. I mean, 6-7 weeks in a row out there, multiple days each event, and then you throw on some, wonderful heat and humidity. That drains. Which I'm sure you experienced many times. Yeah, and we actually had a lot of
rain delays. Like that's like one of the big memories that I have from playing out there was that we had so many rain delays one season. It was crazy. We just sat around playing trivia games and talking. But, yeah, I would say that was definitely one part. I would say the swing, you know, like not understanding my swing enough that I could help correct it. And when somebody was trying to help me, I still didn't quite understand, like, why. So, you know, there's a you know, when somebody tells you or tries to help you but doesn't really give you the reason why something is happening, for me, that's always been, I think, a harder change to make, you know. Like, why am I making this change? Like, I don't know why. So I just didn't connect the dots at the time, looking back on where my swing was. And then I think the third one was just the confidence, like, and playing and finishing out your round strong. Like, when you had a good round going, actually kind of just going, like, keeping it going. Like, oh, it's okay to be 2 under. Like, this is not your best. Like, you can get to 4. Or you can get to 5.
Right.
You know, like, whatever it was, you know, like, because that, you know, that just, I mean, you play a lot of golf, and, you know, you're at the time, like, you're not happy shooting even par anymore. Like, you're just kind of, I just want to go low, right? So you're always looking for, like, but you can't force it. You just kind of have to let it happen too. Like, there's no, that's the thing with golf, right? Like, you can't make it happen, but you can struggle around and shoot 73 all day long. That's possible.
Right.
And not get anything going, you know, like, it's kind of like sort of hitting a wall and sort of hitting your head a little bit all the time. And so having that you know, Vision 54 type mentality where, you know, you can birdie every single hole. I would say that I grew up with that mentality, but there's also, if there's nobody around you to remind you about that, exactly. You get away from it a little bit.
Well, and I think for a lot of amateur players, you know, it's hard enough for the pros to do that, but they've got those individuals in their circle to sort of fall back on, especially in today's game with not only swing coaches but mental coaches and fitness coaches and things like that. Whereas the average player, you know, doesn't have as easily accessible to that type of you know, input, if you will. And one of the things, and I know I wanted to mention too, is you know, you've now gone on to become a teaching professional. From being a player to that transition, and you're actually the founder of On the Course Golf Performance. And one of the goals you talk about is really to help them play better on the course. And Kim talked about this earlier on as well, that even she as a golf professional, as a player, struggles with this from time to time, where she's hitting it really well out on the driving range, but then when she transitions to the course, it's like, well, what happened to that person that was just hitting these wonderful shots 10 minutes ago? And you want people, right? And that's something that a lot of amateurs struggle with, is how do I take my range game out of the golf course? And you're helping them do that to become more efficient with strategies and so forth. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, if there was one thing I could tell, you know, every person that I teach about, is that, you know, it's improving their input in terms of not necessarily the amount of shots they're hitting, but actually memorizing or actually associating their good shots with themselves. So, like, when you hit a good shot, I've had plenty of golfers over the year. They'll hit a good shot on the range, so they're like, yeah, just like that. And then they just, like, look back at me. Like, they never even, like, look at the shot or enjoy it. They're kind of just like, that's their expectation of how they want to hit it, right? So, and instead of actually, like, when I hit a shot that I enjoy or that I really liked, I want to see it, I want to feel it, I want to take it in, right? Because I want to anchor that into my body, that is what I want more of. And you know as well as I know that you remember the shots that you put emotion to. And whether that is a positive or a negative emotion, it doesn't really matter. So you want to be really careful with, you know, when you hit a poor shot, that when you add, let's say, anger or disappointment to that, that's going to go into your nervous system, and you're going to remember that the next time you have a similar situation. And that's the thing, like, when you're trying, you know, a lot of people come to me and they want to change things, right, in their swing. They want to improve. And it's not an easy process. It's a very, in a way, it's a very vulnerable process. And I think we don't talk about that a lot, but it's something that it kind of lays bare a little bit of somebody's ability to stay patient and also persistence, right? Because you have to have a little bit of both when you're making a change. And I can look back on myself as well. Like when I was working on my swing, you know, growing up in Sweden in the wintertime, I was always trying to make technical adjustments because in the wintertime you have to stay inside in Sweden and practice indoors. So it's actually a great time to work on technique, and you didn't get so caught up in the outcome because you're just hitting into a net. So it was actually a really great way to make a change. But over here, we're very much, we see the shots and we get very much attached to the outcome versus the process. And I think that's, you know, that's one thing that I see a lot of people struggling with. They take in a lot of the poor shots that they're hitting. And a lot of times also, like when you're trying to change a motor pattern, you're building new pathways in your body and in your muscles. So you have to allow it to take some time. Like it's not going to take just one lesson. Like it's just it doesn't. And I think people that say that, I think yes, you can definitely have massive insights and stuff like that during a lesson, but to actually make it ingrained and have it show up on the course, it takes more than that. Like you need to have the practice on the range. You have to have the transfer training on the course, which is, I think, is a step a lot of people forget about. Yeah, so there's a lot to it. And so one of the things that I do with my students that sign up for a series of lessons is that I provide ongoing support through an app where so every time they have a lesson, they come in and I post a video or some notes for them. So like here's kind of what we covered in the lesson, and here's what you need to practice, because you have a lesson with somebody and you retain a smaller part of that, right? And so if you can kind of go back and look over your videos and, okay, here's the notes. I remember 2 out of 3 things, let's say, right? And then you can kind of remind yourself, this is what I need to, focus on. Because it's so easy. Like most golfers are very creative people. It's a creative game. And sometimes I think we forget that as well, that, golf is, and it's so easy to go down a rabbit hole. Like, this one felt good. Let me try that again. Well, I don't know. And that might be, something completely different than where you actually are supposed to be doing according to your instructor.
And I think, and I think, one of the things that I joke with about with Cindy on the show over the years is, going back to what you were saying about on the range and, thoughts. I think one of the biggest problems that most amateurs have is, and I equate this to, when you're going to the airport. When you go to the airport, what are you doing is you're pulling or you're dragging all of your baggage in order to get ready for your flight. And I equate that the same way with many golfers out there is they're pulling all of their baggage to the first tee. So if they didn't hit well on the range or they maybe had a bad round, last weekend, they're bringing all of that with them. So instead of getting over there and focusing on the shot at hand, they're thinking about that bad round, or they're thinking, I didn't hit those last 5, drives on the practice tee very well. And that's why I equate it with, bringing your baggage with you is that's where I think a lot of it, I've seen a lot of, as I'm sure you have, I've seen a lot of golfers come up and say, well, I'm not playing well, and I think there's a problem, and I need, really look at my swing, and they'll get up on the practice tee, and, they'll hit a half a dozen or a dozen balls. And I'm thinking, well, what is it you need me to change? You hit 8 out of 10 pretty straight, and, you had a couple of bad ones, but overall your swing's pretty good. Well, I'm just not scoring well. And I said, well, maybe it's not that you're not hitting the ball well. Maybe it's something in your strategy out on the golf course. And lo and behold, when we go out for a playing lesson, that's when all the wheels fall off the bus. It's not that they're not hitting good shots. It's just they don't know how to put them together, and they don't know how to think their way around the golf course. When you deal with a player like that, Rebecka, that is hitting a pretty decent ball, you don't want to change and mix up their swing, and now suddenly they're not hitting it very good because you've changed everything. You want them to take those good ball striking techniques and now apply it out in the golf course. What do you do in a case like that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would talk to them about pre-shot routines. That tends to help a lot. And sometimes they also have a very one-dimensional short game. So they get close to the green, and the only thing that they know to do is to take out their pitching wedge or sand wedge. Yeah, I had a woman the other day, and I said, you know, you can hit your sand wedge from other places than the bunker. So that's one small thing, and she's like, oh, okay, cool. You know, she was like, that's awesome. But yeah, like, I don't know. I grew up with using some different clubs around the greens and trying to minimize mistakes around the greens, because I think, you know, as long as you can kind of move the ball around a little bit, if you can putt and chip a little bit, you know, at least decent and know where to miss it, you know, short versus long, you know, avoiding that big bunker that is on the right-hand side, whatever it is, right? Managing your game a little bit. But a lot of times it also comes down to, like, the self-talk and losing your cool. Like, I have a lot of students that kind of, like, she's like, you know, the other day I had a guy, he's like, well, I had one bad drive and it kind of affected me on the next hole. Well, that's great insight, isn't it? Because as long as somebody kind of has the, you know, I actually had him read one of my favorite golf books, and it really talks about the kind of the culture of golfers and how easy, like, we get into our head. And so he was clear enough to share with me that he let the last hole get to him. And I said, you know, like, that's so great that you're noticing that, because you're going to catch yourself quicker next time, and you'll be able to, you know, let it slide off a little bit more. And same thing, I had another guy who's like, you know, he's like, I'm noticing that when I don't play well, I sort of push it more. Like, I try to, you know, kill the ball. And he said, you know, when I try to kind of, like, lay off a little bit and smooth it out, I do so much better. And I was like, he's like, what am I going to do? And I said, well, that's great that you're noticing, because next time that happens, you'll be able to catch yourself quicker. And I think a lot of times it's about that. It's about catching yourself. But I think when we're sort of, like, in our head space and we're not as present as we could be, it's a much harder thing to do. And so, you know, those are some of the things that, you know, I talk a lot about staying present. You know, I think we have tendencies as players to either kind of go into the past, like into our past mistakes or our past baggage, right? Or we go into the future and say to ourselves, oh, if I birdie these next 3 holes, I'll shoot 67 or whatever it is, right? I'll beat my record. And I think that's where we talk ourselves into making mistakes.
Well, there's 3, yeah, exactly. There's really 3 levels. There's what's happened in the past, which you cannot change, and what's going to happen in the future, which hasn't happened yet. So there's really only now that you're dealing with. And you're right. Players either, as I mentioned earlier, you know, drag their baggage to every hole or to every shot, or they start thinking 2 or 3 holes ahead and think, okay, if I birdie number 12 and if I you know, par the 3 holes after that, I'm going to shoot a pretty good round. And instead, they're standing on, you know, number 11 tee, and they're not focusing on the shot at hand. So you're right. Sometimes we have to get out of our own way, and you know, it's not an easy thing. And it's good when people are able to see for themselves what it is they're doing wrong, and self-correct. But I think the biggest thing is a lot of people take too much information with them on the golf course. You know, when you're in a practice session and you're working on different aspects with your coach or your instructor, that's the time to ask the questions. That's the time to work on all the different fundamentals and the different areas of your game that need to be worked on. But once you go to the golf course to actually play around and you're just warming up, that's what you need to do. Warm up, and whatever you've got that day on the driving range, that's what you're going to take, and you make adjustments accordingly based on how you're hitting the ball. Don't start monkeying with the swing and tinkering with your grip and all that kind of stuff, because that's what adds to the levels of frustration for many, many golfers. Rebecka, I hate to say this, but
and
we're
I think
out of time.
Also I would agree with that, because I think a lot of times where whatever shows up that morning is what you have. And the thing is, it's usually not that different from what you usually have. so you can play that. And, that's okay. That you can play that. Maybe the first 2 holes you hit a little bit of a fade, but then you will get warmed up, whatever it is that, is your normal shot.
Right, exactly. And I think that's what people need to understand. And that's what tour players understand. They're not going there when they're warming up before a tournament, making all kinds of swing adjustments. Now, they may go after a round and do some things on the range and tweak a few things here and there, but they're not making monumental swing changes right before they're about ready to tee it up, at the U.S. Open or whatever championship they're about to play. So, well, Rebecka, as I said, we're out of time, but I appreciate you coming on, and I've enjoyed our discussion. And I wanted to just give you a quick moment if you want to let the folks know if they want to reach out to you, either with maybe some lessons, if they're interested in taking lessons with you, or if they just want to reach out and maybe pick your brains a little bit about the game. What's the best way that they can reach you?
Probably on my website. So it's my full name. So it's www.RebeckaHeinmert.com. And I offer lessons here in, as you said, the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm in the East Bay at a golf course called Blue Rock Springs. And I also offer online lessons through the Coach Now app, and which has been really fun. That's something I've been focusing a little bit more on this year with not having to teach or being able to teach in the spring. And it's pretty cool how a couple of my students have been able to make some really great changes in their game. And, so that's definitely available as well.
Perfect. Well, Rebecka, thank you very much for joining me this morning, and hopefully you had a good time. And I promise the next time you come on the show, I'll make a point of insisting that Cindy is present as well. But thank you very much for joining and sharing some of your wisdom. And please, if you're talking to her, tell her that I did a pretty good job on my own.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Enjoyed it.
All right. Thank you very much, Rebecka, and much continued success this season, and stay safe.
All right. Thanks. You as well.
Bye-bye. All right. That was my very special guest, Rebecka Heinmert, LPGA teacher professional out in the East Bay area of San Francisco. And you can get a hold of her at www.Rebecka, and then Rebecka is REBECKA, Heinmert, HEINMERT.com. I want to thank everybody, and particularly want to thank both of my guests, Kim Kaufman and Rebecka Heinmert, for joining me this morning. And I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Women of Golf. And I will be back, as will Cindy, next week here on the blogtalkradio.com network. Hope you tune in. God bless everybody. Stay safe and have a great week. Thanks for listening this morning to the Women of Golf Show. Tune in live each week by visiting blogtalkradio.com/Women of Golf, or on any of these social media platforms: iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, CastBox, TalkStream Live, and of course Spotify. If you can't join us live, check out our on-demand section for previously aired broadcasts. To get updates for future shows and upcoming guests, you can follow us on Facebook at Women of Golf. You can also follow me on Twitter at TedandBuckCEO and Cindy at Cindy Miller Golf. Please remember to join us next week on the Women of Golf Show. See you next time. This has been a production of the iGolf Sports Network.